Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of This Is Your Captain speaking. Super excited about the topic that we have here today and with the guest that I have on, Greg Brooks. Greg is a partner and CMO at SearchTides. SearchTides is a hub for all things SEO and search online. And a couple of things about Greg's experience in the past, he's been a founder at a company called Textbook to Solve, also been a managing member of One Stop Scholarships, and has now been the CMO at SearchTides for the past 9 years, or almost 10 years, looking at your LinkedIn profile. A couple of fun facts as well about Greg: a professional poker player, so that's an interesting fun fact, and also a co-founder at a company called Lego Poker, which is a first of its kind community-based website for teaching poker strategy. So I guess that professional poker slash hobby also fueled that business as well. So welcome, Greg. Great to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Andy. I'm absolutely blushing over here. I think yeah, you went deep. I appreciate that.
No worries, man. That's what we do. That's what we do. Tell me a little bit about SearchTides, and then we can talk about poker. But I want to know about
Yeah,
SearchTides first.
exactly. Well, I think poker was the interesting kind of foray into this idea that life can just be a big game if you want it to be, and that's kind of what SEO is. And so, SearchTides itself, we used to just be focused as like a conventional SEO agency. We've probably done some of the most successful SEO campaigns that have ever existed in the industry. Then we're really, really data focused. We have insights probably a year before most companies and the industry as a whole has them. So we kind of said, hey, this is less fun keeping this for us and our clients. Let's start to open the kimono and really talk about how everything works. And so SearchTides has transitioned into being a hub for all things SEO, search, AI, the future of how knowledge is acquired on the internet. And we talk about it on our website, in our email newsletter, on our social media platforms.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay, so let's focus on the SEO piece. You mentioned there some of the you've been involved or you have ran some of the best performing or best SEO campaigns ever. Tell us a little bit
Yeah.
more about those. So are you able to talk about the clients? If not, tell us about the results. What did you see?
I can tell you about different industries. I think we've probably had three in particular where we had websites that started off at like DR 1 to 5. So DA, DR 1 to 5, domain authority, domain rating, a scale that determines your website authority. And we built them over a course of a few years to become industry leaders in the finance space, in the gaming space, in the pharmaceutical space. And so we're talking about going up and winning against websites like NerdWallet, going up and competing against like the daily fantasy sports websites like DraftKings, going up and winning against pharmaceutical websites like GoodRx. And we've done that and doing it in the fitness industry as well, beating bodybuilding.com, beating healthline.com, and doing it, I think, also in the travel industry, beating websites like Kayak, beating websites. And these are brands that just have way less brand equity. So we've learned the journey of what it takes to take a website from wherever they are in the process, whether it's the beginning, the middle, or nearly at the end, and turning them into an industry leader. And the way that we were able to do that is by focusing on four different categories of things. Number one is link building and authority building, which is critical for a non-local website. We can get into what it looks like for a local website. Number two is content creation. We have a lot of thoughts on content. I know we'll talk algorithm updates and how helpfulness is changing really the landscape of what everyone perceives to be important. A really dialed in optimization process around both web pages themselves, where we're using kind of like thousands of ranking factors and correlating them across different search results pages. And then the last is it's good site architecture. Our number one thing is probably what we would call in 2024 index considerations. So that's basically every page that you put up, every page on your website that exists is either a value add or it's a liability. There is no in the middle. And so what you do and how you structure your website as a result is relevant. So I think that's the high level. Happy to dive into anything from there or just talk in generalities also. But SEO as it stands today, you still need that foundational fundamental level of SEO. That's what we call like conventional SEO or fundamental SEO. That's those four categories that I talked about. The next level up, we believe we're in the influence era of SEO right now and of search and of information on the internet. And that's more like expertise, authoritativeness, experience. And then where we're going tomorrow, which is actually ironic because it will be a time period where there's more AI content on the internet than ever exists. But we believe we're moving into the human era of SEO, which is going to be marked by basically being able to be aligned with, from a heart perspective, from a human perspective, who it is that you're talking with and interacting with, and understanding your customer journey and meeting them exactly where they need to be met, with the authentic choice of delivering value as opposed to selling. So we'll be moving into more of a commoditized internet, because at SearchTides, we believe the cost of content is going to zero. Cost of creating good content is going to zero. That doesn't mean that all content is going to be free to cost, and that doesn't mean that all good content is created by AI. But we have ChatGPT 4.0 right now. It does a not great job, but ChatGPT 10.0 will probably do a pretty good job. And so what does that world of internet look like, and how do you stand out as a brand in that? And that's really where we think the human element of society will actually ironically be the thing to shine through.
Interesting. Okay, so if I'm to dig into that and unravel that a little bit, it's the way that we're going with SEO is that you need to be doing value add, right? Like value add content that is adding value and not just selling, right? That's not like we offer the best XYZ because of XYZ. It's like, okay, you've got a problem. Here's a solution to the problem. Here are some of the things that you can do in order to solve that problem, without me saying I'm the solution to that problem, right? That's the...
Yeah, I think that's well said. I would also add to it, basically, it comes from understanding your customer at a deep level and understanding where they are in the customer journey, and then being able to meet them there in whatever format works best for them. So you were talking about value. We have an internal metric that we use at SearchTides called value per word, which are for creating written content. Quite literally, what is the value per word that we're generating? And on video, it's the same thing. What's the value per second? And value per email that you're sending out, value per social media post that you're sending out. Like, if you're really value driven, but you're doing it through a lens of, this is something that I know that will improve the life of my customer or prospective client or whatever it is in that point in their journey. And that is where you're coming from. You're not coming from, if I say this, they'll buy from me later on. You're like, I'm saying this because it's helpful to them. People will feel that. I think consumers are probably able to detect subtle sales techniques better than they ever have been before. And I think that's not the winning strategy moving forward. The winning strategy is being authentically helpful. And you just also happen to have a commercial interest, but that's sort of your priority too.
Interesting. Okay. So you've touched on the topic of AI there as well within that. So you can still achieve that using AI, right? Like using like, as you said, like ChatGPT 10.0 is going to be, for all intents and purposes, shit hot. Let's say it's
Right,
like it's going to
yeah,
be
it's gonna be fire.
it's going to be just okay. It's going to be good. It's because a lot of people are saying, I'm hearing this from a lot of content agencies and so on. They're obviously biased, right? So content agencies are saying, oh no, you can't use ChatGPT to create content because Google's going to recognize it, and then you're going to get slapped on the wrist. It's actually not about them recognizing you using AI to generate content. It's more about whether or not the AI driven content can actually match this human led approach, right? Or the value led
Yeah,
approach.
100%, 100%. Google doesn't give a shit if it's AI
Yeah.
written or if it's a human written. What they do care about is it providing the highest level of value to someone? So the problem is, most human created content on the internet right now doesn't do that. And so people are realizing, oh, I can have a very watered down version of content. I can have an AI tool create this content for me. It's better than my content, so I like that better. But the problem with that is the bar is getting raised for all content. So that content, even though it's better than what your previous content was, it's not passing the highest threshold of what's considered, like, we'll just call it A+ content, which today still needs to be human written. And then it also, we use ChatGPT to analyze stuff. We don't really use it as much to write stuff, but it's like, hey, look at this article, remove the fluff from it. Hey, look at these 5 articles. These are all what's ranking best on Google. Dissect the subtopics that are in these articles, and also give us a list of every single question that's being answered in these articles. So that's analysis, and that's great to use with AI tools. But we're not saying write this article, because that's just information, and information doesn't win. What wins is understanding the structure of what is valuable and important. I just gave 2 tips on how you can kind of do that. and then incorporating your own experience and your own expertise. So I'll give you an example, Andy. In the United States, at least, I get a prescription for something. I go into the pharmacy, I get it filled by a pharmacist. I can go in and say, hey, I have a prescription for this thing. The pharmacist can say to me, that's great, but there's a generic version available for 10% of the cost. Just use this. That's the pharmacist using their expertise to guide me in a direction that's frankly better. I can go back in there and I can say, I have a prescription for this. And the pharmacist could say, you know what? Yeah, but every time I fill someone with that, it doesn't work. And they come back and I just use this other thing instead and it works perfectly. Just use that. That's the pharmacist using their experience. Those are inherently human. And those are the types of things, that's the uniqueness and the value that you can add into articles and content to make them go beyond informational or research pieces. And if you're sitting here listening to this saying, well, I don't have that level of expertise and experience, then you will lose and you aren't qualified to write about those topics, which is why we talk about authenticity. You have to actually know it and embody it, and it has to be honest, because AI is a better aggregator of information than humans will ever be. That's not our design. We're designed to have human experiences and gain expertise through those experiences and share that uniqueness with the world. And that needs to come out in the content that we create too.
That's a very good point. I think a lot of companies struggle with that due to cost restraints, right? It's expensive to have experts. And that's where people are coming in and being like, oh, I can lean on the AI in order to help me write the content or whatever, or help that make that become the expert. Or I hire somebody that's a bit junior, is a bit cheaper, then I can get them to just write content. I think it's not about writing more content, right? It's not about that. It's about writing the content that actually matters, right?
Yeah, and that's why we say wrap it into the customer journey. Like, don't write content because you think you can get good rankings in Google off of it. Like, most likely you don't have a website that has a high enough domain rating or domain authority to do that. Write content that's going to provide value to people as they are in different parts of the purchasing cycle. And then if that also generates search traffic from that, great. And then, people come to your website for that sort of information, or they watch your videos for that sort of information. And that does become more like commercially driven, what they do. But it's from the ethos of providing value. Like, the age of writing about topic X because it gets high search volume and therefore people will search it, and then people will wind up on your website, and then I don't know, ... something magical happens. Like, that age is the mindset that we need to get out of more. And it's more like, what does our brand stand for that no one else's brand stands for? How do we grab a megaphone and help the person who agrees with that through the journey that they need to come to understand their problems, understand their solution set, and why we may align with their own ethics, morals, behavior, identity, whatever it is, and just focus on that and stop focusing on trying to do everything. You said it perfectly. It's not about writing more content. It's literally not. It's literally going back and returning to what makes your brand or you unique, and just embodying that and spreading that.
First off, I fully agree. I think it's matching the content to your buyer, where they are in the funnel, etc., right? Where they are in their buying cycle. And making sure that it's offering value in that particular stage, right? That's very clear. And moving away from the age of just like writing bullshit content just to please Google so that you get more views in it and get more clicks to come to the site, right? Now, the issue is that top of funnel bit to get more views, right? So like, a lot of companies will struggle with driving the traffic in order to get people into that let's say, buying cycle. Let's say, for example, SaaS brands, tech brands, let's say in the marketing automation space, as an example, there's hundreds that are all operating, competing for the same customer base, that all basically have the same offering, let's say. So there's constantly more and more of these sort of mid-market providers coming into that space and looking to compete, right? And where they're struggling with is trying to drive that traffic to the site initially. So what you've just mentioned there is, once you get them on site, that then pleases the person that's on site and makes the experience much better. But then if we go back to actually driving more traffic before that, like, which way is that moving now? If we're saying like, we're not going to be creating content that's going to be pleasing Google, does the stuff that that you have working in that lower funnel piece once people come onto the site, etc. Is that then fueling where you're being placed in Google, etc. going forward, or how's that going to work?
Yeah, good question. So I'd ask the following question to all of those marketing automation companies, like, what is your game plan to create better content than HubSpot? And so the answer most of the time is we don't have one. We don't have the same level of resources. We don't have the same history. We don't have the same data that they have. Same thing, Marketo, whatever. Literally go through every single one of those platforms. They're all DR 90 plus. Like, how do you compete with a website like that? And the answer is you don't do it head on. So you don't try to just, if you offer the same product set, then you're just going to say the same thing that everybody else says. You're standing for the same thing. You're just going to lose in the brand versus brand identity component because they have a better brand for you. However, your advantage is to stand for something specific. So in the past, we would call this like niching down, and you're like, I'm the perfect for this group of people. But I challenge you to reimagine. It's not about like a specific industry that you're perfect for, but it's about a type of a person. So if I'm just making up examples off the top of my head here. I do marketing automation, but I literally hate setting up funnels, or I hate setting up automation sequences. Well, maybe your automation specializes on like one-click setups. And now all of a sudden that's an advantage that you have. Or maybe it's the opposite. I want the highest level of customization when I'm setting up my sequences and my automations. Okay, great. Maybe your platform provides the highest level of that. But that thing always comes from knowing where I stand as a brand, and then how that impacts my product, and then how that impacts what I can talk about and how I talk about it, and then understanding the problems, the high level top of funnel problems that someone in that specific marketing segment has. So let's go back to like the one-click setups. So what's the problem for that person? They are being told to create these things that they don't know how to create, or they already have a million things that are happening in their day and they're already being taught to do. So now the types of content ideas that I can have is like how to do more with less time as a marketer, how to own things where like without being an expert in the actual thing that you're talking about. And I'm doing this off the top of my head, so it's not meant to be perfect. But the point is like standing for something and being like, this is what we focus on, dictates product, which dictates points of conversation, which dictates content topics, which then that does sound different for than HubSpot, because it should, because HubSpot's job is to be like, hello, we're HubSpot. You've probably heard of us. That's literally their job because they have the best brand equity. And so what everybody else has to do is be like, hello, we're company X. And if you effing hate setting up automation funnels, we're literally what you've been looking for, one-click funnel setup. And so that's how companies like that win. And then over time, they build brand equity, they build up domain rating, and then they do become more like HubSpot. And then they go, hi, we're brand X. You might remember us from our one-click funnels 3 years ago, but actually now we've evolved into all of these things. And that's basically how you get brand growth.
Awesome. Also, I think the thing with that is as well, in my experience, you need to also double down on remaining with that message, right? So like to go back to the one click piece that you just mentioned there, right? Like if you're gonna go with that, you need to go with it for years, right? You need to double down with that. And the problem that I see with a lot of organizations when they're in that sort of scale up mode, they're like jumping from one message to another because they don't really know who they are or what they should be. They're afraid to commit, you know. But the experience that I've made is that the ones that I've seen be most successful are the ones that really committed to it over a longer period of time.
Yeah, ultimately, like you just got to have some trust in yourself and your ability to make discernments. Like if you're a business owner, you're a leadership team at these companies, like it's challenging because you probably raised a Series A or something like that, or a seed round, and then you have investors being like, when adoption, when are you getting adoption, when product market fit? And so you're being asked about these things, but your job is not to be just like a yes man or yes woman or yes person to a board or to your investors. It's they made a bet in you and your job is to stand for something. And they're not necessarily looking for their recommendations to be implemented, but rather they're looking when they ask something that you go, actually, I know what this is. And I stand by our methodology and how we're going about doing this. And then they go, okay, that person gets it. Okay, Andy's got a plan. Cool. We don't have to worry about Andy because Andy's got a plan. And but that's investor relations. That's well, but so I think all these where we're going in business is all of this shit is connected. All of it.
Yeah.
And SEO
Yeah.
is intertwined into it also, but all of this stuff is interconnected. And what happens over here impacts what's over there, which happens over there. I actually think that like the VC and the private equity quantitation of everything is dying. I don't think
Yeah.
it's good enough to look at things in a marketing channel and being like, what's the ROI on this? Because I think the most important metric moving forward is brand equity. And it's like, that is theoretically, we haven't been able to measure that. Ironically, like Google tries to measure that through brand search. And they're like, well, we're just going to heavily weight companies that get lots of brand search because assumably they've built up their brand equity and they're less likely to be like pulling shenanigans. And then they're like, oops, turns out that's not true with online magazines. So they're like, oops, never mind. But so I think that's the future. And it's just ironic because SEO has been put in this position to understand all this stuff and see all of this stuff coming because over the last 5 years, every algorithm update has just been a beatdown of people trying to get loopholes. And it's just like absolutely destroyed websites and companies that weren't just focused on creating genuine value for their user base. So everyone in SEO who's performed well kind of like said, you know what? I'm tired of being punched in the face every two times a year or 5 times a year. I'm just going to do it in the most authentic way possible. And then, which is ironically like kind of the point that Google was trying to get everybody phased up for. And now we can take this knowledge and move it into the next world of marketing and of business and commerce.
I think that thing with brand piece is like, I 100, like I 1000% agree with you. So like, I say this often that brand drives demand, right? So,
Yeah.
it's like, and how do you drive brand? In my experience, is that exact value add, right? And don't offer them something that just like is a direct sale to your product. A good example that I have from my own personal experiences, right? During the pandemic, I was working with an organization and I was like, shit, I need to figure out ways in which I can market to people that's not going to be too expensive. So I was like, okay, what do I do? We were selling a tool which was for B2B sellers, right? And the tool itself was a company called Leadfeeder, recognized the companies that was being driven to your site. And we did a reverse IP lookup, put it into the tool and gave that across the sellers, right? So I was like, okay, what can I do here? So what I was like, okay, I'll lean on my network, get some sales influencers, people that are known in the space. I'll lean into them and get them to give valuable and actionable advice to sellers during the pandemic in terms of how to sell better. And I got them onto webinars, right? It had nothing to do with our product. I purposely did not like put anything to do with the product in there. And a knock-on effect of that, we drove much more traffic to the site, and we dropped paid spend from like a very, very high number down to a very, very little number, and managed to drive the same amount of sales over time, and without actually actively selling, right?
Right.
And
Right. Yeah. What a
that to
surprise.
me, yeah, exactly. That to me was like if you offer value, they will come back to you when they've got the itch that needs to be scratched, and you're the one that has the scratcher. They are going to come back to you, right? That's like this human nature, right? You're going to buy from somebody that you see as like, oh, they're valuable, right? So I'm going to go back to them. So that point alone is awesome. And I think you hit a good point as well about like we haven't been able to track this, or VCs, etc., have been like not looking at this as a trackable metric, right? It's not that you're not able to track it. I think it's just like you're not able to track every stage of it. I think it's like you just need
Right.
to be able to
Right.
track like down, like the main trackable thing is revenue. Like, are you driving more
Right.
revenue, right?
Right.
So very,
Yeah.
very interesting. Yeah.
Here's a line. I love this line. I definitely didn't come up with it myself. I don't know where I heard it, but people buy not based on the value that they think they're going to get, but based on the value they've already received.
That's solid. Solid. And I
That's a
think we'll
good one,
end.
right? It's not mine, so just use it. But
Yeah.
like, so if you take that mentality, you should fundamentally shift how you interact with the prospective customer or client. And it forces you to be more authentic. You're like, okay, now my goal is just providing value and helping people. That's my goal. So now I do things from that perspective. That's what I lead with. Now, this is the opposite mentality that has existed for the last 15 years in this private equity world or this VC world, and they'll just die if they don't get used to it. But like what you have is you basically, and this happens in every single capitalistic market, you have an unsaturated industry, which means there's excess profits. And this was digital marketing at the beginning. This was, whatever, name your industry. And then as people go, oh, wow, there's a lot of money in that, I'm going to start going into that. So you have more and more players come into the space, which raises the minimum bar that's required to be successful. And then eventually you have a saturated market where there's no longer excess profits, which just means things become top heavy. And this is what we see in the United States in so many different areas right now, where you just have like the bigger companies getting bigger and taking bigger parts of the pie. But that's a proxy for what the magic formula in business is, which is the best companies win the most. And as time goes on, there will be less available for the larger amount of non-winning companies. So yeah, you have to have these contrarian takes, and you have to be like, hold yourself to a higher standard than what you're being told makes sense, because you literally need to win. It's excess profits still, but only for the winners, which means you need to do extraordinary things. And that's just ultimately like, that's the bar. Wherever you think the bar is, raise it by 5 times as high, and then build out from that perspective. And things will actually get way more clear on what you need to do.
Solid advice. And I think we'll end on that. Greg,
Okay.
thanks so much, mate. Thanks so much, mate, for coming on. It's been a great pleasure speaking with you. Where can people find you?
So people can, as I mentioned, SearchTides, we're putting out a lot of information right now. You can follow us on social media at SearchTides on YouTube, at SearchTides on LinkedIn. I'm also on LinkedIn. I think it's like Gregory B. Brooks or something. You can go to SearchTides and sign up for our newsletter and hear about these sorts of things.
All right, man. Perfect. What we'll do is we'll also get everything into the description, get your bio, etc. Make sure that we have all those links in there for people to click. Greg, thanks again, mate. It's been really great speaking with you. And yeah, looking forward to hearing from you again at some point in the future. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for the chat, Andy. Appreciate it.
No worries. Guys, this has been another episode of This Is Your Captain Speaking. Tune in again next week for more great content. Thanks, Greg.
Okay. Thanks, Andy.